Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to go over some common pitfalls or mistakes that students often make when working with a block-based platform like Tynker. And the reason I want to go over this is because sometime I'll have a student that's going to come to you and say, I have everything exactly right, why isn't it working? And I want you to be able to kind of quickly figure out some of the things that might have gone wrong, that might sort of look right, but that are actually incorrect. And sometimes all it takes is one thing being incorrect for the whole thing not to work. So first thing, we just want to make sure that the student has the blocks in the right place. So a student might be directed to put blocks under an actor, but that student might put those blocks under the stage instead, or the other way around. Or they might come to you saying, I can't get the motion blocks, they're all grayed out. You just got to show your student, well, if you want the motion blocks, it must be that you're trying to do something with one of the actors and not the stage. And if something is wrong, all that needs to be done is those blocks can be dragged to wherever they're supposed to be, and it'll just create a copy wherever you drag them to. So that's kind of an easy fix. Something that's less obvious and problematic has to do with variables. So there are a lot of things that can kind of go wrong with creating and using variables. So I want to go over some of these common examples with you. So for example, so in this case, let's imagine the students were directed to create a variable called car, C-A-R, but the student created the variable but then realized, oh, I spelled that variable incorrectly. Let me create it again and create the right way. So now there's two variables, one C-A-R, one K-A-R, and then this variable is supposed to be set to yes. So the student drags the whatever K-A-R over, and they set it to yes, and then they want to use that variable car, and then when they drag the bubble over this time, they put C-A-R, and then they press the play button, and nothing's happening, and they're wondering, why is nothing happening? Well, first of all, when you set a variable, want to make sure that we're using the right block. With setting variables, so there's two blocks that kind of look similar. One has set blank if any, the other one is just set to blank. Want to make sure you're using the right block, and that goes for other things as well, like for motion. Want to make sure if you're supposed to change X as opposed to setting X. So some of these blocks look the same, but they actually do very different things. So in this case, we have the right block here, but instead of using the bubble to set the variable, you want to encourage your students to set the variable from the drop down. So in this case, they'll be able to see whatever options are there, and in this case, want to go with the C-A-R option, and then when that variable is being used, just making sure that the student is using that same variable. So in this case, when you're using the variable, you drag the bubble over, and we want the C-A-R. And if you're noticing that your student has kind of two of the same variable, especially if like one is misspelled, you could just have your student figure out which one is actually in use and to delete whatever one is not being in use. So in this case, the K-A-R is not being in use, so we're just going to delete variable. We're going to select K-A-R and get rid of that so we don't run into any other problems further down the road. Okay, so then another thing that could go wrong has to do with whether the variable is global or local. So when you create a variable from the stage, there's no options. It's always going to be a global variable. That means that that variable can be used and seen by any of the actors that are in the project. However, if you create a variable from one of the actors, you are given options to either create the variable locally, in other words, for this actor only, or globally, but the default is local. So if your student, in this example, was supposed to create a global variable called variable 1, but he or she created a local variable instead, then this local variable might be set to yes, but then if the student is supposed to use that same variable with one of the other actors, so in this case, the student would go to the other actor, and then they would be looking for that variable, and the student might recognize, well, that variable that I created isn't there, I don't see it, oh no, what do I do? Hopefully at that point they will ask you, and you could tell them, well, you created it locally over here, that's why it's not showing up. But then if they don't ask you, if they want to try to forge ahead anyway, they might decide, well, I know what I'll do, I'll just create that variable here, and I'll spell it exactly the same way, and then I should be able to use it and everything should be just fine. So they create it for this actor only, variable 1, and now they take variable 1, they put it in that say block, they press the play button, but it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And maybe at this point they come to you, and then you have to figure this out. So I want you to notice where the variables are, and I want you to think about if a student is trying to set a local variable from one actor and use that same local variable on another actor, then it's not going to work. The reason for that is because when you create a local variable here, it is completely different than the local variable here, even if they have the same name. So these are two different variables. We have variable 1 for this actor, and we have variable 1 for this actor. So we cannot use a local variable from one actor on another actor. So if that is the problem, then you would have the student delete both of those local variables, and then make sure, I would even go as far as to click the drop down or whatever to get rid of whatever's there. I would have the student throw away the bubbles and then create a variable. So make sure you throw away those bubbles first, because we don't want an old bubble there, especially if we're going to create a new variable with the same name. So this one will be variable 1, and then make sure the student selects for all actors, presses create, so that way it appears under global variables. We could set that global variable to wherever it needs to be, and then when we go to the other actor, we're making sure to drag the bubble from the global variables, so that way when the user hits the play button, he or she will see that it is functioning the way it's supposed to function. So that's pretty much it for variables. Next thing I want to talk about is just the positioning on the window here. So if you're having your students use the motion blocks to put certain actors or things in a certain place by coordinates, and things aren't going exactly the way they're supposed to go, or things aren't ending up where they're supposed to end up, you might want to have your students check to see the canvas for the actor, because if that actor is not exactly centered on the canvas, then that's going to cause some strange things to happen when you start trying to move these things around using the code blocks. And to get the actors back to center, all you have to do is select the whole thing and then check the center, put them right in the middle. And this could be especially problematic if you're having an actor use the pen tool, because you're going to end up, especially if you're drawing all the way to the edge or whatever, you're going to end up off the screen and things are just going to kind of turn out kind of funny. So make sure those actors are centered. And then another thing that I've seen cause some problems has to do with resizing. So there's a couple different ways to resize. So you could actually, if this isn't going, if the program is not running, so I'm going to hit the stop button, and you click on one of the actors, you have these handles on the corners that allow you to resize. So you can resize this way, and you could also resize by using the blocks. Like under looks, there's one that you can set or change the percentage. And if you start changing the size using some combination of these two things, it might get a little bit complicated. If they're supposed to follow a direction to have it a certain size, it might get a little bit off. So it's just going to take some kind of figuring out to adjust this the right way and this the right way to get it whatever size it's supposed to be. And most of the time it doesn't matter if it's exactly perfect anyway, but that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so there are other things that can possibly go wrong, and some of those things probably are also quite common. So maybe at some point I will release another video going over some of those other things, but hopefully what I've covered today can be helpful to you, and hopefully that can help you to get your students to get where they want to be and that things can go more smoothly. Thank you.